Hey, what's going on, everybody? Before we get into the video, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting. Even if you don't like the video, still comment. We're the only YouTube channel on YouTube that responds to 100% of the comments. You could say we're the YouTube channel for the little guy.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So let me start this video off by saying I did enjoy a lot of parts of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. However, I do agree with many fans that it wasn't all it was hyped up to be, and there were a lot of storyline mistakes, especially in the third act, and it felt very safe, which at this point in the MCU, we don't need more of. I want an interesting, unpredictable film. So let's see if I can fix it. I did enjoy the first Ant-Man film as a heist genre in the MCU, and the second one was fine for what it was as an individual self-contained story. But if they're going to branch into an epic Avengers-level threat with scale and story for the third film, we needed something different than what we got. When I think of some of the best solo MCU films, Captain America: Winter Soldier and Thor: Ragnarok, what made them stand out to me was they had repercussions and consequences that affected the greater MCU, and that's what I wanted from this film. The three biggest changes I'm going to make is making MODOK a more central antagonist, as well as hyping up Kang to be an unstoppable force of nature that can't even be touched by the Ant-Man crew. And finally, a third act with stakes and unpredictable consequences that will have ripple effects, similar to S.H.I.E.L.D. breaking up in Winter Soldier or the destruction of Asgard at the end of Ragnarok. I want a film that will last with its consequences. So to start us off, it would be very much the same as the original film, with Scott Lang enjoying the perks of not only being a hero, but saving the world and just trying to have a little bit of normalcy in his life, spending time with his daughter, Hope, and the rest of the family. I liked the beginning of this film a lot, and it wasn't until the second and mostly the third act where I'm going to be making some of the major shifts. So we get our call to action, if you will, which from a character standpoint is where they are thrust into the storyline. In this case, our characters are thrust into the Quantumverse. This is where we come to one of the biggest changes in my story. As the family is thrust into the Quantumverse, Scott and Cassie have a relatively same plot where they just meet natives of the quantum realm. However, the Pym family is immediately attacked by MODOK. But this MODOK is different from the original film's MODOK, as he's not working for Kang, rather working against Kang, leading the rebellion against Kang and his armies. And in fact, he knows Janet quite well, as at the beginning of the film, MODOK was the one to save Janet rather than the original Quantumania film where Kang did. So Janet and MODOK have been working together for decades, leading this rebellion until Janet was able to escape the Quantumverse. I think this would make for a really interesting character dynamic, as Hank and Janet have just reunited at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, and this could cause some friction with them and make it more interesting, as Hank obviously hates Darren Cross and Janet has been working with him for decades and having many battles. This could also work well for setting up the Quantumverse and how menacing Kang is by how much we show MODOK fear him and how desperate he is to need their help when it's revealed that he's the one that's been calling Cassie through the quantum realm, requesting help. The remainder of the first act would consist of Scott and Cassie trying to save Hope, Janet, and Hank from MODOK, only for them to also get captured, where MODOK reveals that he needs their help in order to pull off the greatest heist of all time, to steal from Kang the Conqueror. In exchange, by stealing his power core to his time chair, a generous buyer will then get them out of the quantum realm so they'll be free. I like MODOK capturing the Pym family and being a friend/foe for this heist, as it would be a nice through line through the trilogy, as obviously he was the antagonist of the first film. So moving into the second act, we have MODOK working with the Pym family to plan this heist. They say they need some resources from the city, so we get some scenes of them meeting aliens or Quantumverse creatures and exploring the city, where we then hear tales of Kang. I really would emphasize Kang's tenacity and his power by having different citizens tell the Pym family different stories of Kang, one of him being a pharaoh, one of him being from the future, all different backstories, but of course them all being true, kind of similar to Heath Ledger in as a Joker in The Dark Knight. But this way it would give Kang a very menacing presence because no one truly understands him and give him some mystery. The midpoint of the film would finally have the heist, in which we see Scott and Hope working together as Ant-Man and the Wasp to break into Kang's castle, his fortress, while MODOK and the other rebels distract Kang's guards. Scott and Hope are shrunken down to ant size, sneaking around the Kang's throne room as we see Kang for the first time as a giant to their perspective. Kang hears something and realizes that he's not alone in the room as he calls out. Scott tells Hope to go get the engine core as he distracts Kang. He's still shrunken down, sneaking around the room as Kang looks for him, and they have a conversation where we meet Kang and hear him for the first time and his menacing plan. But Kang reasons with Scott, telling him that he is a master of time and can give him back the 5 years he lost with Cassie if he stops what he's doing and goes back home. He can give him the 5 years between Infinity War and Endgame. Scott contemplates this seriously, but knows that it would only disappoint his daughter, and he wants to be the hero she knows he is. So once he gets the message from Hope that she has the engine core, he runs away before Kang is able to find him. I thought it was a missed opportunity to have a villain that could literally control time and a hero whose only wish was to get time back. I thought that could have been a really interesting dynamic and tested Scott as a character and his willpower to do the right thing and his selflessness. Hope and Scott then rejoin the Ant-Man team along with MODOK outside the fortress as they're fighting off Kang's forces. Inside, Kang realizes that the engine core has been stolen from him and immediately becomes furious and enraged that he was tricked by such a tiny little insect. We then have MODOK explaining to the Ant-Man team that he needs the core to give it to a variant of Kang in exchange for their freedom from the quantum realm. Cassie warns the Ant-Man team not to give it to MODOK of the mischievous and potentially evil methods that this buyer might have. As they ponder on it, MODOK attacks them. However, they are saved as Hank calls in the army of ants, as in from the original film. I did like this scene a lot and thought it was really cool to have Hank have this heroic moment. The Ant-Man team hop on some giant ants the size of horses as they fly off into the quantum realm, followed by MODOK and his crusaders. Now, for my third act action sequence, I would compare it akin to that of Mad Max Fury Road, one of the best action movies of all time, in which we have the Ant-Man crew flying off on these ants being chased by MODOK and his rebels in these awesome Quantumania-style vehicles, with the Ant-Man team jumping back and forth from vehicles, keeping the MacGuffins away from MODOK as they shrink, grow in size, have all kinds of wacky abilities, running through the vehicles and taking out the Quantumania rebels. They look up in the sky, millions of Kang's battleships, attacking the vehicles below, demolishing them, destroying them. They don't stand a chance. Kang is in the largest of the ships, a gigantic, massive warship that is dropping bombs relentlessly on the ground to kill the Ant-Man crew and MODOK. That is until Hank and Janet fly up to Kang's ginormous warship and shrink themselves down to molecule size so they can sneak in to the power core as they melt it down from within, both knowing that they're sacrificing themselves for their family and the universe, but this time they're doing it together, so they're happy, knowing that they're going out as heroes as they were meant to do. Hope and the rest of the team are obviously incredibly distraught seeing these two sacrifice themselves for them and the sake of the universe. However, they carry on with the mission knowing what's at stake. That is until Kang teleports right in front of them. He was survived not only the explosion, but is perfectly intact as he dismantles them quite easily, even MODOK, taking them out. Just as they think all hope is lost, Kang fires a blast at Scott, only for Cassie to jump in front of, disintegrating her down to nothing, down to the nearest molecule. Scott screams in rage as he goes to attack Kang, only to be beaten down again. Kang is just too powerful for them. Just then, MODOK grabs the MacGuffin and holds it down, transporting him, Scott, and Hope away from this dimension and into the Council of Kangs, as they meet a variety of different Kangs from different universes, all standing around watching them. Immortus, the oldest and wisest Kang, thanks them for bringing them the device, as that he tells them they will get a reward. MODOK asks only to be brought back to Earth, as he has done so with the snap of the fingers of Immortus. Scott grabs the MacGuffin and threatens to smash it, breaking it to pieces, unless he can get his daughter back. Hope warns Scott of what Cassie warned him about earlier in the film, that they don't know the intentions of these Kangs and these buyers for this device, and Scott shouldn't give it to them. But Scott isn't listening. All he wants is his daughter back. As he goes to hand the device to Immortus, Hope stops him, causing a fight between the two. Hope and Scott are forced to fight each other for the sake of the universe, as Scott was only thinking about returning the death of his daughter. We see Paul Rudd at his emotional peak as he's almost crying, fighting the woman he loves in order to bring back his daughter, and Hope trying to do what she thinks is best for the universe, as always the responsible one. Scott is able to best Hope in a fight, using a move that Hope taught Scott at the beginning of the Ant-Man series in the first film, and he gives the core to Immortus in the Council of Kangs as they resurrect Cassie right there in front of him. Hope and Cassie are then transported to Earth as the film ends with a giant light exploding out of the Council of Kangs. In the post-credits scene, we have Scott being a prisoner to the Kang variants as they explain to him that he will not be released as they need the Pym particles not only to wage war with Kang the Conqueror in the quantum realm, but with all the other multiverses. As united, they are enough to beat Kang and start the multiversal war, and Scott will be a major player in it. I think this would be a good hook leading into the multiverse saga of phases 5 and 6, as well as fleshing out Scott as a character. I like how he's like the opposite of Thanos in this movie, and that Thanos was willing to sacrifice his daughter for the universe, and Scott was willing to sacrifice the universe for his daughter, showing a flawed hero at their best. Thank you so much for listening. If you got to this point, again, I would really appreciate if you'd subscribe and like or comment, and hope to see you again soon. Let us know what you want to see next in the comments. Have a good one.